Good evening. So the title of my talk tonight, it might be a little counterintuitive. The price of awakening. What does that mean? What I want to do is I want to tell a little story, and then I want to talk about what we have to pay, what we have to let go of when we wake up, and then some ideas about how we actually do that. That's what I want to do. So let's start with a story. In the 1950s in Thailand, there was this Buddha in a monastery, a big Buddha, about 10 feet tall. And it's made out of packed earth, a kind of a plaster mud. And then on top of that were pieces of cut-colored glass stuck into this Buddha. The Buddha had been there as long as anybody could remember in this monastery. And they had to move it. And they discovered it was very heavy. So while they were moving it, a crack formed in the Buddha. And when they began to investigate this crack, they saw that not too far under the surface of this earthen Buddha was a gold Buddha. And so they began taking off the layers of this earthen material that was packed all on this Buddha, and they discovered that this 10-foot tall solid gold Buddha had been wrapped inside this earth coating for a long, long time. They think the Buddha was made maybe the 12th or 13th centuries, and that it had been covered by mud in the 1700s, when an army from Burma came through, and they thought that that army may well make off with this golden Buddha. And the Buddha, when I said it's heavy, it was like 12,000 pounds, solid gold. They say the gold in this Buddha, just the gold, was worth something like $250 million. And nobody knew. It was hidden under mud. So why do I tell that story? Because we are like that Buddha. Inside of us is a golden Buddha. But we've covered it. We've covered it with a layer that we think will protect us. Just like those monks covered the golden Buddha with mud and pieces of cut glass to protect it from being stolen, we cover ourselves with a layer of protection. You know, our world is filled with threats. For the monks, the threat was an army. For us, the threat is all kinds of things real and imagined that we think might harm us. So we cover ourselves up. We cover up our own goodness so that we don't lose it. But there's a trouble with that. We think when we cover ourselves over with the mud that we are protecting ourselves. But in actuality, what we're doing is we are walling ourselves off from our true goodness, our true value. We're not walling ourselves in. We're walling ourselves out. And like the monks, we've done this so well that we forget that there's a golden Buddha right in here. So what is this protective skin that we've created? And we know what the monks packed on that golden Buddha, but what did we pack onto ourselves? It's difficult to see. It's difficult to see what we've packed on ourselves because we think of our protective layer as me. This is me. It is my beliefs, back, my opinions, my persona, the clothes I wear, the car I drive, the house I live in, the way I move through the world, my persona. It's the roles and the identities we take on. I'm a lawyer. I'm a teacher. I'm a this, that. Our look, the look we put on ourselves to tell people, I'm this, not that. The kind of clothes we wear, the way we cut our hair, the way we speak and act. All these things are like the little colored glass particles that the monks put into the mud on that Buddha. They're all little ways of saying, this is who I am, and we think that's me. We think that's me. They show the world one thing, but what's true about us is completely different than that. Completely different. And we could think of our human society as really a bunch of posturing skins posing for each other. And this even follows us into practice. When we show up in practice, oftentimes we can hope that what practice will do for us will be to polish that protective coating we've got on the outside so that we can look even better, so that we can impress our Sangha. We might even want to start putting those little pieces of shiny glass we call enlightenment into the protective mud around us so that we can say to other people, look at me, I'm enlightened. So one of those pieces might be, look how kind I am. Can you see this, everybody? Look how compassionate I am. Look, everyone, look. Look how calm I am. We might even want to start to look like a Zen master. Maybe we want to look like Thich Nhat Hanh and the way he moved with such complete mindfulness. Say, oh, I can put that little piece of shiny glass on me. People will think I'm like Thich Nhat Hanh. Or maybe we want to smile like the Dalai Lama. Fool people into thinking that that smile was real, but it's really just one of those little pieces of shiny glass that we're sticking to ourselves to protect us. So here's the practice fallacy that a lot of us have, is that we might believe that practice means polishing up our exterior skin to make ourselves look more impressive to the world. And we might hope that practice adds more to us, that it gives us something we didn't have before, and it's not going to cost us anything. We can just polish things up. But the truth of the matter is exactly the opposite. If we want to touch the true worth that's inside of us, it's not a matter of polishing up that protective skin. It's a matter of bit by bit, removing that protective falseness and putting it onto the altar of transformation so that our true goodness, our internal golden Buddha, can shine. We pay for our awakening by removing our protective skin. We might be able to think that we can wake up and it's not going to cost us anything, that I still get to look really great. But we can't. Awakening isn't free. The price of awakening is me. all those things I want to project to the world as me. That's the price. How do we actually pay this price? It's one thing to talk about it. What do we do? I want to talk about two basic steps that we take. And the first one is generating happiness. Seems a little counterintuitive, but that's the first step, generating happiness. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh used to always say that if your practice doesn't generate happiness, you aren't practicing very well. Because when we're unhappy, we have a hard time even imagining that there's goodness in us. We're unhappy, so we spend a lot of our time packing on more protective layers. And we see that the world out there is a place of danger and of competition, and we're afraid. And so we protect and we protect and we protect. And so this is why Thai would talk about how important it is to generate happiness in our practice. Because without happiness, we're just self-protective machines. And it's very hard for us to see our own goodness. And we find those moments of happiness, those steps towards happiness, right exactly in our life, just as it is. We find ways for ourselves to be peaceful in our daily life. It's possible. It's all around us. We can do it. We find ways for us to be satisfied in our daily lives, to know that we have enough, that we are enough. What a relief. That's not packing on more layers of protection. That's letting go of that, saying, I'm okay. I'm okay. Happiness is here. And Thai saw how much people were suffering. So he made his practice that he taught very much about happiness. And I think in some ways, in at least some Zen circles, Thai's teaching of happiness has been misunderstood as Zen light. That it's not really Zen practice to think about generating happiness. That we should really, if we're going to do Zen practice, we should be gutting it out. But Thai knew that without happiness, it's very hard for us to move forward in our practice. And so he designed practices that invited us to stop and rest, to see beauty around us, to welcome the laugh of a child. These are very important steps in our practice. He used that simple phrase, peace is every step. And a few years ago, we went through that book chapter by chapter, Peace is Every Step. And that's not a trivial platitude. Peace and happiness have to be every step, or we won't ever arrive there. We don't go on a journey towards happiness. Happiness is the journey itself. So the first step is to touch happiness. And I'd like to invite each one of us to begin to look at ways we can touch happiness in our daily life. And none of our daily lives are so difficult that there aren't moments of happiness for us. It's there. We just have to notice. So that's the first step, is to generate happiness. That's the first step to shedding this protective skin. Now, once we do that step, we're ready for the next step. Once we have begun to have moments of happiness in our life, we can start to get a glimpse of that golden Buddha within us. And then we can begin the second step's work, which is to see and transform the skin we have put on top of our golden Buddha. And we have to do this based on our own insights. Everyone has created a different skin because everyone's life is different and everyone's habitual reactions are different. So no one can do this work for you. You have to trust your own insights for this. And I trust that all of you have those insights. You know, when you feel your peace for yourself, you know the inside of peace. When you feel the goodness inside you for yourself, you know the truth of your goodness. When you feel the wisdom within yourself, you know the truth of your wisdom. Nobody else can give you those truths. You have to be able to look into yourself and see this for yourself, using your own insight. And the lovely part about that is when you can feel your own peacefulness, your own goodness, your own wisdom, that is happiness. To see that for yourself is great, great happiness. So once we begin to have this insight into our own goodness in that way, the insight that we do have this golden Buddha within us, then we naturally want to stop layering on more protections, because we can see that that causes us to suffer. And those interior qualities that we have, our own golden Buddha qualities, our goodness, our wisdom, those make us happy. Those make the world happy. So naturally we want to go about the process of beginning to take off this skin bit by bit as we see it. And so we begin that long, careful, slow practice of bit by bit taking a piece of that protective skin and seeing it with clarity and with kindness. Clarity and kindness. And when we see one of those pieces, we bring it to the altar of transformation. And what do I mean by the altar of transformation? It's not like some special place. But for me, the altar of transformation is the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So when I see something about myself that's trapping myself in misery and suffering, I don't know that I have the energy or the insight to solve it all by myself. So I bring it to the altar of transformation. I bring it to the Buddha. I bring it to the possibility of awakening. I bring it to the Dharma. I bring it to the ancestral teachings that have been passed down to us, the insights of all those who have gone before us, and I trust those. And I bring it to the Sangha. I bring it to all of you who are practicing diligently and supporting me as I practice diligently. I rest in your energy. I can't do it alone. And I didn't make this mess alone, and I can't clean up this mess alone. I need the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha to do it. And this isn't the work of sissies. We cannot do this work without a strong heart. It's not easy at all. This work of bit by bit, seeing what we've added on, all those shiny bits of glass, all that packed on mud, seeing that and taking it to the altar of transformation is really hard, and it doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen quickly. It's not gonna feed our ego. No one is going to rush up to us and say, "Oh, you're so great for doing this." The changes are not going to happen really quickly if people see, "Oh, you're a different person." It's not like that. It happens slowly, bit by bit, and it takes a lot of diligence. And so you come back to your practice of looking, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. You do this work alone in the dark on your cushion in the morning when no one sees you. You do this work with the Sangha every week when you show up. You do the work with the Sangha when we go on retreats. It's hard work. It's not for sissies. But, bit by bit, that protective skin falls away. And when it does, that golden Buddha within you shines. It shines. And others see that. Others see that maybe even before you see that. It's a wonderful thing. But when that happens, when kindness naturally starts to come out of you more often, when compassion naturally starts to come out of you more often, and others see that, it doesn't become one of those shiny little pieces of glass that you stick to yourself and say, "Hey, look at me, everybody. Look how great I am." It's not like that at all. Because that kindness, that compassion, that understanding, that love that shines out of you doesn't belong to you. It belongs to us. All of us have that. It's our compassion. It's our goodness. It's our kindness. And so when it shines out from you and makes the world a better place, it doesn't trap you into saying, "Look at me, look how great I am." You're still free. And it keeps the cracks opening wider and wider and wider. So you don't hold on to them. When you act with compassion, you act with compassion and you let it go. You let it go. And then there's another opportunity to act with kindness, and you do that and you let it go. It didn't stick to you. It's not an accomplishment. It's not part of your ego. Each of us has developed this skin on us, this protective skin, and it's different for all of us because our conditions are different. But there are practices that we all can do together that help us to transform so that our golden Buddha can shine out. And these practices have been handed down from our ancestors. And they work. They actually work. It's hard to see that they work at first because this is hard work. And sometimes when we start to do these practices, it feels like things get worse. Because all of a sudden we're starting to see all this protective, yucky stuff we've layered on ourselves, and we don't want to see that. And maybe we start to feel a little bit unhappy about that. But they do work. They do work. So I want to talk about a few of the things that we can try and do together to foster this kind of growth, this kind of change. The first practice is that we have to see clearly what our skin is. So the best way I know to do that is every time a thought comes up in me, I label it. Resentment. There's part of my skin. Anger. There's part of my protective skin. Cynicism. Distrust. You name it. We could name these things all day long, right? But unless you're looking closely, you don't know what your protective skin is made out of. And so you label these things again and again and again and again. And every time you do that, every time you refuse to feed more energy to that particular quality of your protective skin, it grows weaker. It has less power. And you might notice that as you label, you'll see that you do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. And it starts to become kind of funny. It starts to become pretty comical. So dropping these little bits like this, when you label something that says, let's say, rumination. I don't know if you're like me, but I tend to wake up in the middle of the night and start to ruminate. So it's partly easy because I can look at that and say, oh, I'm ruminating again. I can stop. That's kind of easy. But you know what's hard? Is that the ego thinks, well, wait a minute, that's myself. That's what I do. I don't want to disappear. I don't want to stop doing this. So the heck I'm going to stop. So as soon as you say rumination and you come back to just following your breath, there it comes again. Rumination's right back. I'm not going to give up, the ego says. I'm not going to give up. So it might seem trivial to label these qualities about ourselves, but it's not. It's very difficult. They fight back. They fight back. You know, our ego's biggest fear is to be extinguished. So as we do this work, the golden Buddha within us is freer and freer and freer. But our ego, at least for part of this process, gets into real snit, does not want to be extinguished, does not want to let go. It's very happy adding more and more layers of protection onto you. So it's going to fight back. And that is the price of awakening. Our ego does not want to pay the price. Our ego does not want to be extinguished or reduced or taken off center stage. And that's why paying the price for awakening is something that not very many people really want to do. We'd rather just polish up our exterior skin and call it a day. In order to do this work, I think you need a teacher, a sangha, and a really determined heart. I think you need a teacher because a teacher is one who has gone through this work and is going through this work. I haven't met anyone for whom this work is done yet. So a teacher is a companion that's doing this work alongside of you, but maybe he's been doing it a little longer. And so can help you not get caught and not get sidetracked. And I think we need a sangha because we need the energy of doing this together. This is hard enough that if we try it by ourselves, we won't keep it up. But when we can be with our sangha, that gives us the energy to do it. There have been many, many times when I felt I could not keep doing this myself. I could not go on. And all I could do was just be held by sangha. And I think you need that determined heart. I don't know what gives us that determined heart. I really don't. You know, why are you here, but most everybody else is not? Something about you has that determined heart. I don't know what that is. I know I've had it. My parents tell me I was just born with it, that I was doing this from the time I was little. I don't know why. I don't know why you're here, but you are. And I want to honor those determined hearts that you have. And I want to support them. And I want to make them stronger. Because you're swimming upstream. Most people aren't doing this. So you really need that determination. So these gifts that our ancestors gave us to do this work are waiting for us. They're here. They've been passed down to us. They knew what the price of awakening was, and they designed practices that would help us. So my question to all of us is, are we willing to pick those tools up and do this work? Are we willing to pay the price of awakening ourselves? Not just for ourselves, but so that we can be the ancestors for the next generation and pass on our open-heartedness to them so that they can do it. The price of awakening is to diligently let go of all of that suffering we've packed onto ourselves. Bit by bit, again and again, day after day, year after year. Are you ready? Will you join me?